Okay, welcome to our October lecture. I'm Heidi Coombs, president of the Newfoundland Labrador Historical Society. Our lecture this evening is by Jim Dempsey and Jerome Canning on keeping our boat building tradition alive through heritage experiences. This is very exciting because this is our first live lecture since February. We had to cancel our March and April lectures because of COVID-19, and our September lecture was a recording of a lecture that I gave back in the spring for Happy City St. John's. So this is our first live lecture since February. And it has been a strange year for all of us, and it's very unexpected to be delivering a lecture online, but here we are. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. I guess I don't have to direct anyone to the washrooms this time because you're all at home and we're not at Hampton Hall, where our lectures usually take place. We are going to record the lecture, so I'm recording it right now, with the possibility of posting it on our website afterwards for others to view. I'm going to format it. We have it formatted so that only the speakers' cameras are showing as they speak. But if you want to ensure that you won't be seen in the recording, just turn off your camera in Zoom. So there's a little icon down in the bottom left-hand corner. There's a mute button and also an option to turn off your camera. So just click that, and we won't see your video in the recording. Everybody is muted upon entry to prevent noise and feedback so that we can hear the speakers clearly. We'll give a little bit of background on this society before we get started. The Newfoundland and Labrador Historical Society began in 1905 with a mandate to promote knowledge and public discussion of the history and heritage of Newfoundland and Labrador. We do this through a series of public lectures and symposia, publications, and through our annual Heritage Award, which last year went to our beloved former president, Larry Dowie. Membership in the Historical Society is open to the public and costs $40 a year, which includes a subscription to the Newfoundland Quarterly. And this month, membership included this exclusive invite to this lecture because we did not widely distribute our Zoom link through social media, which we usually do. But if there is anyone watching who is not a member, we would really appreciate your membership since we are a nonprofit organization with very limited resources, and the quarterly subscription makes it a sound investment. If you would like to become a member, please visit our website, www.nlhistory.ca. I would like to acknowledge the Department of Tourism, Culture, Industry, and Innovation, which helps support our initiatives through the Cultural Economic Development Program. Our lecture series runs for the duration of the academic year from September to April, excluding December. And there's usually a schedule of our lectures on the website, although this year our lectures for the year are yet to be decided. And with that, I would like to introduce our speakers for this evening, Jerome Canning and Jim Dempsey. Jerome Canning was born on Mirisheen Island and grew up in Placentia. Trained to be a teacher, Jerome chose to join the family growing fishing enterprise. In the early 70s, being a fisherman often included being a boat builder, and so Jerome and his brothers became proficient carpenters. Over time, Jerome became a professional boat builder, working in shops in Toronto and Montreal, and then with the Fisheries College, Fisheries Loan Board, and Marine Institute. Since the late 1990s, Jerome began building boats for the public to see. Amongst his projects were a dory at the Craft Council, a Scandinavian fairing at the Arts and Culture Center, and a punt at the Rooms. Since 2010, Jerome has been part of the Wooden Boat Museum, where he concentrated on sharing his skills with people who are interested in traditional boat building. He has conducted workshops at the museum in Winterton, in a shop front on Water Street, in coastal communities, and at Memorial University. As a former teacher, his interaction with children in the Young Builders program is a joy to see. Jim Dempsey grew up on Vancouver Island and has lived in Newfoundland since 1982. Jim has always been near the water, whether in his old clinker punt as a child, as a skipper of a 40-foot workboat working on the west coast of Canada, offshore eastern Canada from Sable Island to Hudson's Bay, or at home in Flat Rock. Jim joined the Wooden Boat Museum in 2010, and in 2011 collaborated with Jerome to establish the museum workshop program. He is now chair of the Wooden Boat Museum Board of Directors and continues to take a hands-on approach to workshops. So with that, I will throw it over to you, Jim and Jerome.
Thank you, Heidi.
Okay, Jim, we need to unmute you, I think.
And I'm unmuted.
Right.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Jim and Jerome Show. We spend a lot of time together, and so I hope this will be entertaining for you. Tonight, we have two presentations will be the backbone of our, our discussion. The first will be a introduction to the Wooden Boat Museum, and I'm judging by the people in the audience that might be kind of overkill. But nevertheless, I'm sure there are things you don't know about us, and it'll give you a background in who we are, what we do, what we're interested in. Jerome will lead the second presentation, and it's a little bit more specific. It has to do with the design of traditional Newfoundland boats. And it's based on the work that the museum has done to document these boats, learn the builders' stories, and then we actually take the information, create very elegant designs, and in some cases, we actually go out and build those boats. So here we go. I like this title slide. This little girl was a real firecracker. She and her family came in, and like a lot of children, they really take to using hand tools because they've never done it before. And when they have some success, it's really sweet to see. So I'm sure that everybody here has heard of Henry Vokey from Trinity. I thought I'd start off with a couple of his punts. These are on the collar at the battery. And it just is a good starter to show that the tradition is still alive. We'll talk a little bit about the museum itself here now. I don't have too much text here. The Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador strives to safeguard the tangible and intangible cultural heritage associated with the historical design, construction, and working life of Newfoundland and Labrador's traditional wooden boats. How do we do this? Well, we archive the designs and stories of the traditional builders. We present exhibits of our wooden boat history and its contribution to the province's economy and way of life. And we pass on boat building skills to all ages. The museum's motto is look, aft, and learn, a fitting expression, especially for historians out there. We're trying to learn where we're going in the future, in part from our history and heritage. Where do we come from? Well, very quickly, back in the 70s, we were just another community museum. And I don't mean that disparagingly. We had a pretty good collection, or have a pretty good collection of artifacts which describe outport life. But over time, we learned that what we really had to offer was our boat building heritage. And it took the recommendation of David Taylor, who was an American doing a master's in folklore at MUN, to point out that we were a real hotbed of boat building. Based on that, we started to inch towards more focus on the boat building side of things, and we became the Winterton Boat Building Museum. In 2008, we incorporated as a registered not-for-profit organization and became the Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, this is important because we're no longer a local community operation. We were an organization who took the challenge of taking a provincial view of wooden boat building and our history. And I think that we've done a pretty good job to date of following that mandate. I'd like to talk about David Taylor just a little bit. Jerome and I call him our patron saint. He is a scholar of quite reputation. His master's thesis, as you can see here, has been published as a book called Boatbuilding in Winterton, Trinity Bay, Newfoundland. That's a pretty good indication that we were on the map as far as boat building is concerned. And his PhD thesis was a comparison of small boat designs in Trinity Bay and in Norway. And so he's definitely into small boats. He understands the international scene and the heritage that goes with it. For the last 30 odd years, he's been working at the Library of Congress, and he's just in the process of retiring now. He approached us and said, you know, I've got this pretty good library of traditional boat building books, and I'd like to find a home for them. And so we told David, well, you know, we're not really in the library business. We don't have the facilities to properly store them or properly keep track of them as people use a reference room in Winterton. And so in the end, we helped him to find a home for these books at the Maritime History Archive at Memorial University. David's pleased, we're thrilled, and I think it's a real feather in one's cap to have this collection there. So one of the things that David told us that in order to understand wooden boat design, you have to understand the context in which the boat was built and used. And so if you go around the bay and talk to people about punts, small wooden fishing boats, everybody will point out that they're not all the same. And I think some of the designs that Jerome will present later will show you that they're similar but different. And that's a reaction of the builder to the local environment, the economy, and the species that they're fishing, et cetera, et cetera. And so that link to the fishery and the use of the boat is important to us at the museum. And as you can see in this slide, we've actually used Winterton as a microcosm for a typical coastal fishing community. And in this case here, what we've done is documented all of the fishing stages in the town. They're all related back to families that have been there for a long time. And we have I can go another leg with this, and we can show all the trap berths in the immediate area. So that's the context of the use of the boat and why they were built the way they are. I won't bore you with a lot of pictures either, but these are indications of Winterton in its heyday. And this is probably, you know, in the 50s, 60s, and even into the 70s, when wooden boats were being built basically all over the town. So you can see this wharf here is next to the town slipway. And today it's being rebuilt, so it's much stronger. And it actually has a line of fisherman's stores on top of it. But it's basically the same infrastructure that existed back in the 70s, 60s, et cetera.
The only thing different about that there now, that picture on the bottom and today, there's still small boats there, but there are very few wooden boats. It's mostly now all boats that you'll see in the food fishery, the 18-foot speedboat. But there's still many boats in Winterton, at the Winterton Wharf, you know, during the summer months.
Yeah. These boats here are all wooden boats built locally. And you can't see it in black and white, but many families or towns will have a consistent color scheme for their boats to indicate who they are, where they came from. And as it turns out, the Winterton boat is a white hull with a gray trim. Now, I've been told it's a gray trim simply because it's easiest to mix white and black and come up with a different color. It's easy to find the paint. So talk about the museum itself a little bit here. First of all, where are we? Well, we're in Trinity Bay, and we're a long way north along that eastern shore of the bay. It takes about an hour and a half from downtown St. John's to get there. Usually you go through Carbonear and across to Heart's Content and then on to Winterton, but you can go through, excuse me. You can also go through Whitburn and go up along the shore. And I find this drive along the shore in the morning in the summertime is beautiful because you see the sun rising and lighting up the mountains on the other side of the bay. Museum building. It used to be the United Church School. And like a lot of towns in Newfoundland, there were multiple denominations. And so this happened to be the United Church School. It was actually donated to the museum as former residents took it upon themselves to buy the building and make sure that it became a museum. We don't own it. We work in conjunction with the town of Winterton. And we're their biggest attraction, and we're their best tenants. So it's a really good relationship. Inside the museum, I'll have some pictures here in a minute. We're open from late May until early October. We're in the tourism business. I know you're here for the heritage and history, but we have to face it that we earn a living by being a tourist attraction and providing interesting things for people to do. So we're open from late May until early October, and that's a new thing, actually. Like so many tourism businesses, we basically went from July 1st until Labor Day in the past. And being one of this generation, I think there's a lot of business in the shoulder seasons. And so that's worked out quite well for us.
We had some workshops in the early part of June there for a number of years.
Yep.
So we were doing quite well. And we also had workshops right at the end of August, right into the beginning of September. So that's a plus, that's for sure.
I think as we go through this, we have to reflect back on this strange year that we're almost out of. We actually had serious questions as to whether or not we'd be able to open in the spring of 2020. And so we continue to have regular meetings and assess the situation. We monitored everything that came from both the provincial and the federal governments. And I'm glad to say that the Newfoundland government provided enough information that we were able to put together a serious game plan of how we could comply, how we could be viable financially. And it turned out to be a pretty good year. Like everybody else, our expectations for visitation were quite low. Last year, we had our best year ever at about 3,500 visitors. And this year, we thought, well, it's a break-even game plan. If we see 500, we'll be doing pretty well. In fact, we saw well over 1,000. So we're quite pleased with that. The staycation really worked for us. When you get there, you'll see that the downstairs of the museum is devoted to exhibits of small craft construction. And it's not big, but it's actually very, very high quality. We have upstairs, we have that community museum, all of the traditional artifacts that were part of outport life in the past. We have a second building, which is a 30-foot by 50-foot boat shed, and that's where Jerome hangs out. And every year we're building boats in there. So we're pretty active, and we surprise ourselves when we go back and count on our fingers how many people we've actually provided some level of training to. So we consider that to be a real service.
This year, we actually finished off a MUN boat, which was a lot of work because our MUN workshop had to stop because of COVID. So we finished that boat, but we also built another boat this year. So it was very active.
Yeah. And naturally, we had to be concerned about people being close together, physical distancing. So we opened the main door to the garage door for the building, put a barrier across there, so our visitors had to stay outside in the parking area, and Jerome worked inside. And many days he had an assistant who was a volunteer from one of our MUN courses in the winter. So. Not only are we giving people instruction, but we're also building good friends and members. And so we really appreciated that. The assistance was limited once again by COVID, but Jerome found a way that by keeping apart from each other and by not sharing tools, they were able to do a pretty good job. So a few photographs. Yeah. Go ahead, Jerome.
Yeah, no, we actually had 2 to 3 days a week that I had those assistants. It was really a wonderful help. It was great. John Lawton and Kurt Rumbold and Max Wulak. Yeah, that was wonderful. Great help.
As a sign of our continuing development, we actually renovated the whole main floor of the museum last year, and we had a grand opening in June 2019. And it's really quite a pretty place. We spent a lot of time on this. We had quite a bit of professional help. We actually have an architect on our board of directors, and he helped us a lot in making sure that we had a free-flowing and structurally sound design for the building. So I won't go through all of the details here. My favorite room is this one up here that's all golden, perfect light for the photography. And we call that our boat building room. And you can stand in that room for half an hour and come out really understanding how a traditional punt is built. In the photograph I showed earlier with the locations of the stages in Winterton is in this room here, where we talk about fishing stages, we talk about trap berths, and actually put the small boat business into the context of the life of the town. Well, this is Jerome's boat building shed. So maybe you can describe it a little bit. It's had some history. It's been evolving every year.
When I first went down, well, I think 2010, when I first went to Winterton, it was basically a dirt floor. No windows as you see there now. It had, the garage door was there, but in the back, especially where you see where the children in the crowd, you now see there's a second level. That wasn't there. So over the 10 years with various monies and stuff like this, we managed to make it, as you see in the lower right-hand corner, there's two large bays that we build. Although you see punts there right now in the lower, like I'm talking about the lower right-hand corner, you see two punts in frame there, but the one on the left, that's usually where we build our dories, and the one on the right is where we build our punts. It's a big shop. It's 30 by 50, 12-foot ceilings. It's really roomy, and this summer I really noted, because when we have this large garage door open, it was like you're outdoors, which totally suited the COVID issues that we were dealing with.
In terms of evolution, these things don't happen overnight. As Jerome said, the building was built in 2010, and we were able to fund that with money from the province as part of the Cupid's 400 celebration. And in fact, the purpose for building the building was so we could build a kind of replica of John Guy's boat, the Endeavour. I say kind of because there's not a lot of documentation for it, but we use that now as a kind of symbol on the road to show people that they're here. So this old 17th century boat is sitting there drawing them in. Because we're a provincial organization, our membership is somewhat far-flung. And so we have an annual general meeting every year, and that's when a lot of our members get together and they make the effort of coming into wherever we're holding the AGM for the weekend, and we try to make it a good time. And so we call it the conference. The annual general meeting actually takes place in about half an hour, but we have a whole weekend of conference and activities so that people can get together and enjoy themselves and see old friends. I was talking a little bit earlier about having good partnerships. We've made a point of holding our conferences in various places around the province, around the island anyway, including Trinity and Glovertown and Harbour Grace. And it's made a bigger deal for our members, and it's a really welcome visit for the hosts. And so you can see we sometimes sit around and learn something. In this case here, we're demonstrating lofting, which Jerome will talk about a little bit later in the other presentation. A couple of times we've actually launched a boat, and that's a fun tradition, which involves songs and a bunch of people getting down together and launching the boat for the first time. And if possible, we'd like to get out on the water as well. So you can see there we're having a little punt race in Petty Harbor. And then we've got some motorboats here in Winterton. And we had sculling races in Harbour Grace. It turns out there were a couple of really good scullers, and they just walked away with it. And there are a few amateurs that never done before. It was a lot of fun. Right here. Documentation program. This is something that our visitors only see the benefit of, but in fact, it's a really important contribution to our heritage. Crystal Gray, our folklorist, has spent a lot of time meeting builders throughout the province. This is Calvi Metis here from Southwest Arm Trinity Bay. And as you can see, he's not a young'un anymore, but we were able to capture the design for his motorboat. And not only do we take the lines off of it, and you'll learn more about that later, but Crystal sits down and does a pretty comprehensive interview to learn about what his life was like, how many boats he built, what other factors were in his life. You know, was he a woodsman, or was he a fisherman? And all of that information has been collected, including audio tapes, and it's housed at MUN in the Digital Archive Initiative. So if you can hear a lot of those interviews through our website, www.woodenboatmuseum.com, and it's there for forever, and it's available to everybody. So some of the other things that we do with the information we collect, we have friends in Twillingate. They're kind of a spin-off from our museum. We consider them to be partners. We have a contractual agreement with them. And so we've provided quite a bit of exhibit material, including an area which has where we celebrate their builders, and there are a lot of good builders still in Twillingate. And this is just an example of the kind of product that we can produce there. We get to see some pretty interesting boats sometimes. You can see the Gander River boat there, of course. We have a Gander River boat, and we've documented it quite well. But Jerome, maybe you'd like to talk about the top right-hand corner there where Crystal's taking notes.
We were down in Rishun. That's the top right-hand corner. You see Crystal with the blue coat sitting down. I'm there summarizing that darkness there, which is quite typical when you're out documenting boats. You're usually in some stage or shed or underneath a shed or wherever the boat may lie, and you know, it's always in the strangest positions. But what this one is that you see there is very interesting, at least from anyone who's interested in boats at all. It's called a swamps boat in Newfoundland, and speculation on it is that back in the 40s or 30s, Swampscott dories had come to the south coast down the Burin Peninsula, and the local builders, fishermen at the time saw this particular dory. Those dories are all around 18 to about 21 feet, but when they saw the dories, what they did, they took the shape of that boat, that's the swamp dory, and Swampscott dory, and they made a punt out of it, really. They put a keel on the flat bottom and a skig area that you see. And the boat grew to be about from that 20 foot to 26, 28 feet. So that's a really interesting evolved dory. I've never heard of anywhere else that did that sort of thing. You know, put a keel and then an inboard motor. And she was that boat there, Herbert Whiffen, I believe it was the builder. I think we're going back to the 50s or 60s when that was built. He wasn't present when we took the lines off that boat, but a very interesting boat, that's for sure. Lobster, cod, that's the type of thing. It fished in Placentia Bay. The one just below that, that's the West Coast dory, which is another evolved dory. If you were to see that, that's the very colorful one you see in Lark Harbor, Bay of Islands. We refer to it as Bay of Islands dory, but if you're talking to these builders, what you'll hear them calling is the dory after the name of the community that it was built in. It would be probably a York Harbor dory or Lark Harbor dory. But what it is a flat bottom boat with a very high crook at the bow, and is used for lobstering mostly, but they're used for cod too. And they're all built from wood. The bottoms are usually boards, and they're very wide, 18.5 feet, almost all 18 to 19 feet. and the sides are in mostly the boats that we saw are made of plywood. And they're outfitted with anything from about 80 to 100 horsepower motors, which I was wondering about when I was talking to them. They tend to, at the beginning of the season, they're close to the shore, but in the middle of the lobster season I'm talking about, they go a further 20 miles off. So they do need a large motor to get out, haul those pots, and get back in as soon as they can. Interesting boats, really. And the one to the left, did you see the three of us there, Jim, myself, and Crystal? That's, of course, a St. Pierre dory, another evolved dory, a large dory. These are 24, 25, 26 feet. They also have an inboard motor. But in the case, different in the Swampscott dory, which the propeller doesn't lift. In the French dory, the Miquelon dory, or St. Pierre Miquelon dory, the shaft is actually lifted back into the boat in a well as it's beached. So three interesting boats. And actually, of course, in the top left-hand corner, the most beautiful boat you will see is Riverboat. And that's the Gander Riverboat. Beautiful boat.
Jerome, the St. Pierre trip was interesting for us. We were asked to come to St. Pierre to comment on and assist the people in Miquelon who wanted to do a traditional dory building workshop on the ferry wharf in Miquelon as part of the 200th centenary. And we were going great guns. We went down and looked at this artifact that will never sail again, and we took the lines off that and photographed it all around with the intention we were going to come back and be part of this program. The sad thing was that the French government had put a beautiful workshop into the town hall in Miquelon, and it burned down after we left. So we never had a chance to go back. But I've had pretty close relations with St. Pierre and Miquelon since then. And I learned when I visited the Zigoto workshop in St. Pierre that they're building these boats out of plywood, yes, but that 27-foot length hull has a single sheet of plywood on either side. It's custom made in France, and so it's quite unusual from our point of view. It's not the kind of planking that we're used to. So we get to see some pretty interesting boats.
It's interesting. You see how it towers over us in that picture? I know it's on a stand there, but it's a big boat. It's a big dory.
They were interested in the Miquelon dory in particular because their fishing grounds were that much further distant than the grounds that the St. Pierre people fished. So they needed a big seaworthy boat that could steam for hours out of port to get to the fishing grounds and then get back. So it's quite interesting. I'll pick up the pace here a little bit, but once again, it's Crystal with the Boat Builders in Glovertown. And I have to say that boat builders, apart from Jerome, are usually pretty introverted and don't talk very much. And Crystal had a way where she could sit down with a cup of tea and get these old fellas to talk and talk and talk and talk. And so she's got some great information. Just finished off the documentation program. We've actually published some pamphlets about some of these boats. Naturally, the Gander River boat and the Bay of Islands dory are significant, but we could put another half dozen of these together pretty quickly, and we may well sometime in the future. So we'll talk about boat building workshops here, and yes, we do build boats, and we do help people learn traditional ways. And so I thought I'd start off here to show that it's not just guys. We've got 4 different workshops going here, and we have women and girls who are interested in this. Very quickly, we'll probably mention some of these again. The top left was a dory that we built with clients of Thrive, the youth group, and the intention was to give them something that they could do with their hands and something they could feel proud of, and they did a great job. The top right and the bottom left are both workshops that we held at MUN. Jerome mentioned MUN a minute ago. We have a partnership which seems to be ongoing, but COVID kind of got in the way this year, with the Faculty of Education, and we use their education technology shop on the second floor of the Hickman building. And it's an opportunity for us to run a winter night course 2 nights a week for 12 weeks and actually build a pretty significant boat. Jerome said this year we had to get out of there when the COVID really struck, and we weren't able to get back to it until June. So just a few more scenes. In this case here on the top left, we've got a young fellow who's lofting a dory. On the top right, we have 2 families in Petty Harbor who were assembling a dory. We brought all the parts and they assembled them on a Saturday. Bottom right is putting the closing plank in to one of our Marcus French punt projects at the Education Technology Lab. And Jerome, maybe you'd like to talk about the bottom left there, crowd of people in the shed.
We're on the West Coast during this, where this picture was taken in the park over there. We were over there for a week, I believe, 2-3 years ago. Trails, Tales, and Tunes celebration. That's a Sunday morning. This picture was taken, and it was in June. And of course, everybody knows in June we had a snowstorm. So outside of that door there right now, there's probably about a foot of very soggy, wet snow. But all these people made a point to come out, and it actually was a great time that morning. We didn't do that much boat building, but I think anybody who's ever gone inside of a stage where a boat is being built or a shed where a boat is being built, the only one working most of the time is probably the boat builder, but everybody else is telling stories. And that was the atmosphere, and that was the story of that morning. Everyone there had it was a 2 or 3 hour conversation and storytelling of boats and underwater tales, and it was a wonderful day. That was a great morning, I must say. It
was a great opportunity. We did some work with Parks Canada on that trip as well. Probably have to pick up the pace here a little bit. Just more pictures of action. Everybody's heard of the story of the boat builder who built a boat in his basement and had to take out a door or a window or part of a wall, present company included. So the one drawback for the workshop at MUN is that we have to take the boat out down the stairs. And so this is a fairly well-coordinated and labor-intensive operation. Fortunately, the boat at this stage is fairly light, and so it's not unmanageable, but it's part of building a boat.
It's the continuous, the course itself at MUN is a 12-week course, 2 nights a week, a total of 7 hours over those 2 nights. And throughout that whole thing there's always this, anytime how we get into this out, and you describe that you got to go out to this door, turn, go down, go out to those doors, turn, go down these stairs, edge it through the doors down below. There's always this, I believe it when I see it. But anyway, here's a picture to prove it. We do manage it every year. It's always a tight squeeze, but we manage it.
Okay, so you can see we play around with make and break engines a little bit, and we do build dories, even though Winterton is a punt town. And the dory is because it's a manageable project in a reasonable length of time. So we can pretty well build this dory here in the bottom right 5 or 6 days, with some preparation from Jerome.
Yeah, I'm working pretty hard there.
So I don't need to go into detail here, but you can see we've got lots of happy faces. We give everybody certificates. They're proud as they can be that they've actually taken part in building a traditional boat. And we've got kids and families and the Thrive clients in the middle here. A group of women that came to see us in Port Union in one of the meetings they had there with Craft Council. And this one here is interesting. It's a family from Boston who have Newfoundland roots on the Baccalieu Peninsula. And they came to us one year as they were visiting their property and said, we're going to develop a summer place here. And if we're going to have a Newfoundland home, we need a Newfoundland boat. So the fellow from Boston commissioned a boat. And the only stipulation he had Wasn't price, actually. It was the fact he wanted his family to share in the building of the boat. And so you can see here, I think there are half a dozen of the family members there, father, daughter, and brothers, and that sort of thing. But over the 3 weeks that they were involved in the building, I think a total of 16 people from the family came and went through Winterton. And I said earlier that we're in the tourism business. So if we can attract an American family who's renting cars and staying in bed and breakfasts and buying groceries and going to restaurants, that's really good for the neighborhood. So they were so enthusiastic about it. We've taken the boat to this level here in the bottom little picture, and he wants to come back and do some enhancements. We couldn't do it this year, but he phones me up in the middle of the year and he says, I can't wait to get back down there. So it's really a source of pride that we can pass on that kind of excitement. As we talk about boat building skills, we do more than just build boats. We talk about all of the other skills that are involved. Some of them are directly involved in boat building, and some of them are fishing or woodsman skills. And these are things, activities that we can offer in a very short period of time where people will have an opportunity to feel that they did something. Or you see here, these are all coastal skills, using an adze, which is a pretty dangerous thing to do, but safety is always number one in our books. And so this young woman has been thoroughly briefed. She's got somebody right next to her, and you can see we've actually prepared the log for her, so it's a little easier for her to cut. Knitting a net, tying lines and splicing, cutting fish, using hand tools. In this case here, these two young women are actually taking the bark off a live log using a draw knife. So we're not afraid to let people use tools as long as they do it our way, and we're there to supervise them. And the satisfaction, once again, they get of actually learning how to do something that's foreign to them is absolutely tremendous. So as we extend our suite of activities from building traditional boats to heritage skills, we actually have what we call a Young Builders program for children. And we do a number of things with them, but one of the things that they seem to like the most is they put together the IKEA dory. Now, this is a dory that doesn't have any planks on it, and really they're just assembling it with nuts and bolts. But you can see with everything is labeled, everything is color-coded for port and starboard, and they actually come away learning quite a bit about the boat after they've built it. And it's really satisfying to see how these kids get together and learn how to use tools they've never seen before, and put it together and have them stand back and feel good about it. And
they come back to a lot of the guardians and parents and grandparents who take these children. They actually come back almost every summer. Some of them do, for that workshop.
It's a really cool activity, and Nan is only too happy to bring them out again. So just a couple of other pictures. We try to give them something to do, something to go home with. And a large part of the afternoon is, the half hour or 3/4 of an hour they spend down on the beach, on the land wash, or on the stage, where they sail the boats that they just assembled. And I remember doing that when I was a kid. We used to have a stick and a string and a boat on the end of it, and we'd run down the beach and we'd watch the boat flying through the water and setting up a wake, and it was good entertainment for quite a while, actually.
Yeah, they build a model. They go to the stage that's in the top right-hand corner there. We show them the lobster pots and whatever else is in the stage, and they go out on the stage head. This is for a lot of them, especially most of those kids have never had that experience, but where they really enjoyed, and especially when the day is good and warm, and we've been very fortunate during these children's workshops. They go down to that beach, and in the lower right-hand corner, you can see them. They don't mind getting wet and sailing the models that we built in the workshop. They're very happy, almost as happy as their parents, because it seems like it's a day, really, it's a family day for the most part.
So we've been talking a lot here. I'm going to finish up this presentation with just some color pictures of the really satisfying part of our job. These are all boats that we built in workshops, built by students, and we've taken them to the finishing point where they really looks like something. The dories up in the top left-hand corner there are the replacements for the aging Portugal Cove St. Philip's Regatta Day that they have in June or July. And they spend a week practicing at St. Philip's there. And then on the Saturday, they go out and they have quite an elaborate regatta. Similar are the two boats just below that, the yellow and the orange one. We built these for Newfoundland next to Winterton. They too have a summer regatta, and
we did something different with these dories, which is I don't think I know of any other dories in Newfoundland that had it. Most people, these two dories are used in the dory races for a weekend. And a week leading to that is a week of practice. But people getting these dories, for the most part, have never been in a small boat, and in particular, never rowed a small boat. So we, working with the New Quilligan organizers, we put a keel on both of these boats and a rudder. And that made a huge difference to directional aspect of it and to safety of the boats. They go the length of the pond, that's in the pond right in New Quilligan, and then they go down around the buoy, they turn it really well. These rudders are really make it quite easy, and they come back up. And no one has ever tipped the boat or gone into the water. Is a huge bit of fun for everybody. So putting a keel on the boat and that rudder was quite a change for what I know of dories anyway, because they're always just flat bottom. So that's something new for me.
Both of these towns have an annual regatta, and it's something that we are really interested in. We love building boats, and the really best part of how building a boat is being in it on the water. And so we're always looking for ways to encourage people to use the boats, and we're hopeful that over time we can encourage more people to build their own boats and spend time on the water with them. So with that, I'll get out of this presentation. Heidi, how are we doing for time there?
Pretty good. We started about 1:45, so yeah, we got about 15 minutes or so left.
Can we get into the other presentation?
Yeah, for sure.
I'll take it through as best I can. Of course, not in too much of a rush. I had to remember I am in my own kitchen here, and if you're in the kitchen with me, I usually go around in circles when I tell anything. What you're looking at there in that first picture is the Madeira punt. She is a half-scale model of a boat that really, as a result of our documentation, that this boat, our documentation and a method of building called the whole mold or adjustable mold method. This boat we built for Madeira Engineering, and because of our documentation, because of research I'd done on the adjustable mold, this is the result of it. I'll talk about that as we go through. But she's in the main lobby of the Madeira Engineering building, which is out on Hebron Way, I believe. And it's a really lovely exhibit. That boat there is in, as I say, in the main lobby, but is leaning. And when you come through the door, what you see is the inside of the boat, and you see all the longers and everything. Is a real nice sculpture, really. I didn't think it was going to be as, I really enjoyed the boat, but that was a different thing for me to do. It was quite a pleasure to build, and every now and then I managed to get in there, have a look at it. She's still looking good in that lobby. So that was a great thing to do. With the documentation, many times I went out with Crystal Bray, who led the documentation program, but other people went out too. In particular, Marine Institute, a naval architect student sometimes accompanied Crystal when she went out in the summer, but a good many times I've gone out with her and helped her with taking the lines off the boats themselves, and sometimes sat in on the interviews if there needed to be, as Jim pointed out to earlier. Some of them were shy, and but Crystal has a great way of doing it. She would manage to get me in there just to get these guys to talk, and when they get going, of course, they're probably like myself, they don't stop. But anyway, we documented a lot of boats, and in the case of when I built the Madeira Punt and the Long Row, I'll tell you about the Long Row too. That's my own personal boat that's housed in Winterton this winter. It really was the result of this documentation program. And one of the things I can say to anybody else that was interested in building a boat, if you do go to our website, there's a huge amount of resource there to if you can understand the lines plan, you can actually build a boat from what you see on those pages. When we would go out, and these are ones that in the top left, that's in Saint Lunaire. We're taking the lines off a trap skiff there. That trap skiff has the reputation, sadly, of the last trap skiff that was built in St. Anthony. You can see when you take the lines off a boat, you need to have measuring equipment. So you have to make a giant square. That is instrumental. That's the primary tool, and its position. That's the primary tool for taking the lines off. And taking the lines off is actually taking the shape, the geometry of the boat, and as it is, the outside skin, the outside of the plank is taken. As you can see, we have a standard form, so we won't go astray, and we have consistency. And this is, you can see the boats are in peculiar places. It can be upright, upside down, behind oil barrels. There's all kinds of things. But in the end, when we start measuring, we measure to a standard. We have to measure the profile, length and width, and then we have to do sections, as you can see in the right side in the upper part of the diagram, showing the giant square. And what we're doing, we're taking measurements from this giant square to the surface of the hull and recording them in the sheets that you see to the lower left and to the lower right. So we get all these numbers, and we take tons of pictures because there's an incredible amount of measuring. And we always got to remind ourselves with the pictures and these numbers, what we did when we come back to Winterton, when we draw the boat. Next one, Jim.
We'll get back to that in a second. I just like to, it seemed to be logical to do the form after the photos. But throughout this, I've emphasized that we are the Wooden Boat Museum of Newfoundland and Labrador. And in a lot of the things I've said, I've talked about the island of Newfoundland, but we have been to Labrador. We do have friends there. And one of the things on our list of things to do is to spend more time with Indigenous boats. So Jerome, maybe quickly you could talk about your trip to Labrador here.
Yeah, well, the top left is we're in Cartwright, and that's a unique speedboat there called a Cartwright speedboat, and the Cartwright Wherry, that's one upside down with the giant square on it. We're measuring up there. And the one to the right, that's we're in Nain. That's Noah Nakasuk, and they're in the community building. They have a lot of power tools and everything. He's teaching these kids and other people how to build kayaks. So we actually recorded one of the kayaks, and these are the kids that day. Noah was showing them all about and talking kayaks and getting a lot of interest. In the lower left-hand corner is in Hopedale, and that's a very interesting boat and a very interesting man. That's Ross Flowers. Ross has a skin kayak. Noah's kayaks are actually a synthetic material that he stretches around them and puts glues them. But in the case of Ross, he actually got his plank by hunting seals. Beautiful job he's done. And we learned all about how he sewed. We also learned that he has to hunt two types of seals. There's the bottom plank, if we would like to call it plank, but the bottom skin is made from harp seals. And the reason he likes the harp seal, because that's a thicker seal, thicker skin seal. And the ring seal he uses for the top plank. And they're sewn together over a loose frame, which is incredibly interesting and simple. It just amazed me. If the resources are always there for if you need a boat, there's resources. And I'm sure further north there's less woods and stuff like this, but they use animals, and of course that's something that has been all over the world using animal skins, but that was the first time and the only time I actually ever saw anything like that. And Ross was fantastic, talking about how he's shown us how he sews the skins and telling us stories about how his mother taught him how to do that. On the lower right, that's Jeremy Harnham, who is another folklorist with this documentation program. And right there, we're looking at a rope hunt.
Okay, well, let's get back to punt design here.
Yeah, when we go into the field, we do all that recording, as I pointed out. We take all of the measurements, and we create what's called a table of offsets from that, which represents with just basic numbers, distances from the square, the shape of the stem and the midship bend, which is one of the main frames. And then we do a lines plan. We draw that boat. We draw it in the scale. The scale I use is 1 to 12, so we draw it in a small scale of 1 to 12. And then we take that drawing, and we got to be always remembering the boat that we took these lines from. And that's not just remembering, but we have tons of pictures to look at and to make sure that our measurements, from these measurements, that what I end up drawing is correct to what we saw in the community, the boat that we saw in that community. It's really important to be always, when you're there, to be always looking at that boat and giving it, a really good eye, because the eye of the builder really is, as it says there, is an important part of design, but it's also an important part of recognizing what you're looking at and peculiarities to the shape. And this is what we end up with in the second stage. This is the drawing. That's one of the Marcus French, which I redrew from Dr. David Taylor's book. And the lower part, you can see our table of offsets, pile of numbers. And so we have different views. We have a profile view, which is towards the top, right under the words field measurements. Half ref view, which is just below that, and to the right of that is our section view. These three views are used together, but they are the same boat. And it's on first inspection, it's a little complicated. The lines are going everywhere, but you sort of get to see the tree in the forest with all of this, and it's important because it leads to our templates, and I think that's going to be to the lofting process in our templates. Here in the Marcus French, you also, after the lines plan, you do a construction plan, and that tells what will the distances between the timbers, how big the timbers are, the toughs that are in it, where they're located, the keel size, the keel joint, bolting, fasteners. This informs what we're going to do with the boat when we build it.
This is the boat that we've been building at Munn the last 3 years. And Jerome, we counted up that you've done 5 of these recently.
Yeah, 2 this summer, yeah.
So, this is our signature boat. We may get tired of it and do something else, but it's nice when we're teaching to have a standard boat, and so we're not in panic mode trying to figure out what to do because we've done it before.
We laminate our frames, which is quite different from the traditional approach to building a boat. We laminate the frames. All boat builders would go into the woods and find the timbers, the shape of crooked trees or crooks or roots that would represent the shape of the various members of the boat, whether the frame is in the aft of the boat or forward of the boat. They find a match for that in the woods. And a lot of that is still done. But in our case, the harvesting of that wood is a long process, and we opted to go with the lamination. The only difference between our lamination and what the traditional builder would do is only in that is lamination. We still had to put bevels on it, properly place it in the boat, and treat it in the same way as you would with a traditional frame.
In the 21st century, we can't be woodsmen as a lifestyle. I'm sure that a lot of the wood that was not used in the boat, or that didn't work when it was cut, that was a necessary part of life as well. So we don't live that lifestyle, and so we're living in the 21st century. We're quite happy to laminate, use epoxy, use adhesives, and stainless steel screws. But apart from that, the construction is the same.
And most of our participants in the workshop too, they good many don't even have a wood stove, so they're not into woods at all. So the lamination is also in answer to them. They can actually go to a sawmill and to a hardware store to find their lumber, because a lot of them are urban. Let's just say they work in offices and that type of stuff. You know, having a chainsaw and you need to live a rural lifestyle to get to build tradition, or you got to take a lot of time off and find timbers. So we do, you know, from the drawing, we loft the boats. The word loft is a funny word. What is loft? When boats were lofted years ago, what it was not much space in a boat shed for anything. Chips and lumber everywhere, but above the boat there would be a loft, and they would get there and take that drawing and blow it up full scale on the floor above the boat, and hence the name loft. And lofting came in. They're lofting the boat. So it was really where they were building the boat, and now is a process that we're describing. And we lofted the Marcus French boat, you know, and any other boat that I build, I always loft my boats. I draw them and loft them. And what you see, the white plywood sheet boards, in the case of that's almost 3 sheets of plywood. We paint it white, and we take that drawing and blow it up full size. So that's 12 times the size that is on the paper, which when you're drawing it, if you make any slight missteps in your lines on the paper, it's going to be 12 times the size, and you can pick it out. So you ferret out all your lines, and that's the first thing you do. You ferret the lines, your long lines and your sectional lines, and then you get your templates. And from the templates, then you get your parts. So you don't see any of the templates here, but you do see the parts. You see towards the stern to the left, you see your stern post coming onto a keel and going to the right of the picture to the stem. And we will show any joinery is done there from the loft floor and to templates. And on the floor is one of our laminated frames. Marcus French, his boat, that, you know, we're really thankful to David Taylor for doing what he did. He spent a lot of time in Winterton, I think over a couple of winters, talking, measuring, getting all the words, and we follow as much as we can those traditions. For instance, we talk about aft hook, you know, midship bend, the aft pitches, fore pitches, all of these things. David Taylor recorded these things. Besides, he has a number of lines plans in his books, but everything that he did, and they said, he found out what it meant, how it was said, because all these were recorded. But one of the things he mentioned was, and it's become our logo, is actually the 3-piece mold. So that's Jack Casey, to one of the documented builders. He uses this method too, and I'm going to describe that as we go on, because that's the method I use to build my own boat, the Long Row, and the Madeira boat. But when people talk about a punt, you know, we pretty well know in general what a punt is. It's a small, open, round-bottom keel boat used in the fishery. She's made of wood. But when you start looking at the boats, in particular, looking at the places that the boats come from, you'll see regional variations and independent signatures of the builder. The Vokey boat, to me, is one of the most recognizable boats you know, you're going to spot. Sammy Andrews' boat, Sammy's dead now since 1968. He has a boat in Winterton, which is a hunting boat, and that's the only boat I've ever seen of Sammy Andrews, Uncle Sammy, they call him in Winterton, or used to call him. But I know that if I saw a second boat of his, I would recognize it from the particular style, he was a fabulous builder. That's the Samuel Andrews is in the lower left-hand corner. That's his boat, and it's in our museum. And anytime you go to linger on that boat, you will see an exceptional master boat builder in the execution of everything he did. It's a hunting boat. The boats that you see in this one, the one in the upper right is one of our documented boats. That's a Thomas Head, and that's a Fogo boat. That's a good old one. If you take a look at that, those lines, they're really sweet. They're incredible rowboat, that one. The other boats, Max Pollard is a Deer Lake fellow. That's the lower right-hand corner. I was with Crystal and documented that boat. And so what you see there, I didn't draw these lines. These are CAD drawings. And after I do the drawings, some which I don't have the experience, we put into CAD, and that's what you see there in the end. In the upper left, on the upper left, that's I think that's Jack Casey's boat. Yes, Jack Casey. I met him in over in Cornbrook. He was 94 when he built this boat, and he was the person who gave me a good many ideas about how the whole molding process works. Jack has passed on right now. He is originally from Conch, as I think I just said. Actually, he's originally from the Battery, moved to Conch, then spent in a senior's home down on the West Coast. But he was a great builder. Anyway, I've been leading up to this because in the end, I ended up looking at a lot of boats. And I really wanted to find out about this whole mold method. Frank French and Melvin Green from Winterton used to talk about Mr. Sammy Andrews, and some of the people down, they would say this Uncle Sammy, he used this method called a whole mold or adjustable mold, and he would get out all the timbers and sling them in a corner, throw them in the corner, and when he was about to build a boat, he would take those finished timbers out of the corner, put them on the keel, and he did, with hardly any fairing, anything. So the method from that description totally intrigued me, and I did some research in it. But Jack Casey was a good source. Mr. Denny Spurvey, Mr. Denny Spurvey is from Fox Harbor. Again, every time I say this, I'm talking about people who passed on. Denny is passed on. Denny was a wonderful fellow. He was really one of the people I learned in my first time building boats. I learned a lot from Denny Spurvey. I used to visit him all the time in Fox Harbor. He would take me down to his stage and show me what he was doing with the boat, how he did this and why he did this. Because all these builders, which is something we think of them only as builders, but they were really and truly designers too. They built the boat for their, fishing out of Fox Harbor in Denny's case, or Jack Casey fishing out of Conch. So when they built the boat, they met it for the conditions that they lived in and the fisheries that they pursued. In the case of Denny was Dennis. He was a very tidy man, and I never forget. Every time I looked at where he used to haul up his boat, it always come to me when I see anything. Next to his stage, he's the wash that he hauled up his boat. It was so clean. He had gone out with his rubbers and took every rock out of it, so that when he came up, it's just a small pebbled beach. And the phrase that always comes to mind when I think of Denny Spurvey is "clean as Denny Spurvey's beaches," because everything he did was tidy. He was a tidy fellow. But anyway, in the end, I researched it and found out that there was actually a chapter in a very old naval architecture book that explained a whole mold. But what I did, I looked at all the, as you can see, the names there, Frank Lane, my own boat, Marcus French, Samuel Andrews. I took measurements. I examined the geometry and actually measured. I measured their length, I measured their width, I measured their depth at midships, I measured angles of entry at the waterline, the exit, on almost 18 boats. There's only some of them there mentioned now. And I wanted to make sure that when I built my own boat, that she may not have the purpose of fishing, but she will fall in all the parameters that describes a punt. So I looked at ratios and I made sure that, a typical length to width ratio, or length to, 3 to 3.25, that kind of stuff. So I made sure my own boat, the Madeira punt, and my own boat fell in those dimensions. but the challenge was to draw it. So I said, okay, I know I was sketching sections to make sure that I had the length right. I chose 16 feet. I chose 60 inches for width. I actually made that. I jumped outside of the tradition of that because I wanted it a little bit broader, because really punts are a little bit cranky. And cranky means that she's quick. She's a lively boat on the water. And any boat that's a decent rowboat is usually lively. So her length to width ratio, that would be, higher, 3.25, 3.26, this kind of stuff. But I wanted a little bit broader, so I put a couple of inches on. But really, that was one challenge, to make sure that all those dimensions fit in this boat. But the way I wanted to build is that I wanted to use this 3-piece mold. So you're going to hear this word, 3-piece mold, adjustable mold, whole mold. They're all the same thing. And it's an early form of naval architecture that's probably goes back 1500s, 1600s in England, Southwest England. So with Jack Casey and Dennis Burvey and the Winterton people, Frank French in particular, I sort of got a good feel for it. And I use this particular method, which can be a little bit complicated to anyone that doesn't know boat building, and in particular, how to use it. But basically, there are 3 sticks. One is the half breadth, as you can see. There's 3 sticks. The half bend. Below that is a thing called a hollow, and another called a rising square. And you use these adjustable ones, and they can make every frame in your boat by matching the sur marks. And these are, like you see, MB, midship bend, AH, aft hook, and forehook. And they're narrowing lines. The forehook is then the sur marks, they're then on the hollow, and the sur marks on the rising line. So I wanted to make sure that every frame of my boat, I could use these sticks and get the frame up, and I managed it. So every frame of my boat actually comes from this adjusting movement sticks, and made my boat both the Madeira and the long row. As you can see, there's a lot more naval architecture terms in this, the rising line and the narrowing lines. These are all important to make sure that when you're manipulating and moving these sticks, they have to come out fair. The boat has to be fair and pretty. I made a number of attempts into drawing things. I made some models. The first ones, they all looked like tulips. You know what a boat looks like. But I pushed it, and I managed to, I think I nailed it, and I'm really pleased with it. So this is what I'm talking about. These are working models. They're not fancy, that top model, but to give you a quick view of what you end up with. And if anyone's been to Winterton, John Joy, who's there in the audience, John has actually been one of the people who came up the boat and rowed. He could probably, after I'm finished talking, she's a really good rowing vessel and a good stable boat. Yeah, we're moving along there, Jim. And oh yes, I said the Madeira. She's in the lobby. This is a picture of her in the Madeira Engineering Building, and she's leaning out, and it's a really lovely sort of presentation with the longers and the stage head look with the boat on top. She's 8 feet. She represents a 16-foot boat. I got a little fancy with the little non-traditional floors in it, but she looks nice.
We installed this boat for Madeira in their office. And this is a large lobby area where this photograph was taken. Since then, I guess they needed the space in the office, and they've taken it downstairs, so it's in the lobby to the building. So anybody can come in through the main door before they go to the elevator, and they can see this boat. It's on display for the public.
Yeah, that was a fabulous. Our museum had a fabulous project with them, and they were really good. They were very pleased with the outcome of that. As Jim and I and the rest of our museum members were with the building of it. It was a great project, and that type of partnership and contract really was something that it's beautiful. It's good stuff. And here is the long row. As you can see, traditional colors. People, the Portuguese look, I call it. But I traditional, you know, I'm always conscious of ancestors when I'm at boats, and always conscious that she has to be built as best as possible, because, you know, they are underwater and you can drown. So, you know, you try your best to make sure she's stable and well built and solid, and, you know, whatever all those things are. But there's a thing, there's a boat builder's nightmare to actually have a terrible boat and leaky one at that. But I'm very pleased with that. The other reason I never said who's in the boat with me there, when I was building this boat, I mean, I was thinking about my own father and Dennis Furby and Jack Casey, all this crowd. You know, it's next to impossible for me not to be thinking of all those people that come before you, that lay the foundation for, you know, what I was building and had been building for 40 years, for God's sake. But the other side of it is that I built it for my son. And that's who's in the boat. That's my son, Ruben. And that's his boat, really. So even though he doesn't get out as much as I do, but it's still his boat. Thank you.
Heidi, that's all we've got.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jim and Jerome. That was excellent. I learned a lot. I don't know anything about boat building, so I really learned a lot. And I think my 9-year-old would love the workshops. So I'm going to have to get him out there as soon as I can.